Hi everyone. Today is Sunday, March 30th, and still a little bit of a cold. Feeling better though. I mean, much better than a few days ago, but it's still lingering a little bit. I can hear that still in my voice. Um, Today I've been reflecting more and more, just uh, the what's potentially going on. I mean, not even just potentially, but what is going on in the U.S. and watching different interviews and with researchers and journalists and uh, people who have conducted a lot of research into the just kind of similar moments throughout history, recent history, and kind of identifying common threads. And yeah, so it's yeah. The more I study about history, um, human psychology, uh, there's patterns that more and more make sense, and uh, even when I consider this as a language teacher and living in other countries, um, I came across a phenomenon, I want to say like 20 years ago, when I started teaching English at many international businesses in the Paris area. Um, and I do remember one specific company where previous to a merger, French had been um, the language of communication, because it the country had only the company had only operated within within France, and because of a merger, it was necessary for the adoption of English as as the international language of communication with another country that was now um, um, kind of through this merger acquisition. Um, Neither country's language was privileged, so across those two languages, across those two countries, the language that ended up like being internationally kind of neutral in a way was English. But in a way, I saw a lot of resistance from the students that I was working with, and it was at a variety of different levels of administration. I believe the people in management positions higher up in the hierarchy had felt kind of a threat through learning English. They were not seeing it as beneficial. They felt, in a way, attacked. They felt that they were losing ground. Um, that in a way, it was a bit kind of a frustration that despite many years of their kind of climbing the corporate ladder, suddenly they were on shaky ground, and they didn't have that kind of acquired um, kind of control or power or influence through, like only speaking one language of French. They didn't see it as kind of a new opportunity for business. And at a larger level across Europe and across European history, as I little by little understood, French for a long time had been a language of diplomacy, and we can see that in the influence of the United Nations having French as a language, official language. The Olympics with French as the official language, and so to see English gaining more influence at an international level, and perhaps to the detriment of the French language, and perhaps to the detriment of kind of French culture. You could see kind of the resistance from the kind of colonial power, kind of between, well, two colonial powers, but one of them not really, through a lot of historical between France and England, and like if you go 100 years war, and just back and forth over their histories, and then at some point allies, but yet under the surface tension, and not really wanting to share that kind of language. There was tension in terms of kind of feeling that English was being imposed as a neutral international language across countries where neither one had English as their native language. And when I would ask about how people kind of engage with English outside of work as well, culturally it was also challenging to see how, like, if there were movies, they were dubbed. If somebody was interviewed on TV, within 2-3 seconds, if there was something in English, it was immediately dubbed, and you could really not hear perhaps an original accent in English. There were quotas on the radio to make sure that there was a balance of songs in English, but also songs in French. Outside of the capital, it was very hard to find, almost impossible to find, movies that might be subtitled if they were in English. Outside of the capital, almost everything was dubbed, and I remember, in terms of travel, I remember one student I spoke to who did travel extensively outside of France, but only went to French-speaking countries, and that caught my attention. So there really wasn't much kind of adventuring into places where this person might have to speak English. They specifically were only going to places where French was understood, and it felt a bit limited. So with my naivete and trying to encourage language learning, and there I was teaching English and trying to help encourage students to adopt this, embrace it, see it as an opportunity, there was a lot of resistance. And overall, it did teach me at a certain level a few things on human psychology, where if you do have a certain taste of power or control or influence, you don't relinquish that easily. Any outside threats or kind of people saying like, okay, it's time to share, it's time to allow other people to kind of engage in this kind of balance of power. People in power, people who see a control and see it like dwindle potentially, they usually clutch to that even stronger. And so fast forward to today, and human nature is human nature. We see kind of these influences where people in power who feel threatened and who do not want to share power or embrace diversity will hold on to that power at all cost. And so it does kind of strike me as like I saw these little tendencies in another country 20 years ago, and I did see how not only what I was experiencing in the classroom at these offices, there were kind of social changes, social movements going on, and there were tensions and riots and things in 2005 that I remember, with contracts and different movements going on. And I could not only have studied about 1968 and hear about it through people older than me, but also kind of in history books and documentation, but then kind of see what that looks like when people react and feel kind of threatened and want to protest and want to speak up and force the government to listen and things like that. So I did see those things in the streets of Paris, and it did scare me. I did kind of see the psychological elements at play in the classroom, and then see what happens on the streets when things get out of control, and when you have people joining forces to speak up, and the reactions from the authorities. I have seen those moments. It's not a hypothetical. It's not kind of. I feel very kind of humbled and to have witnessed those moments and to realize, okay, fortunately, my physical safety was not an immediate danger. Yet I did see protesters at right outside my university, and authorities, riot police coming down the boulevard and finding an exit so I could get out of there. Because it was not my intention to be in the middle of something or to document something. I was not a journalist. I was not a photographer. And to kind of, so I have seen those things take place, unfold, and to see the potential for things back home in the U.S. It concerns me, and so I've been watching videos, interviews from TED Talks and things from researchers, people who are specialized in what goes on into documenting these moments and detecting the patterns and informing the general public. Now, as again, language studies and research and things. Recently, I mean, on another side topic, I've been doing research into kind of some linguistic elements, and despite my many years of teaching and many years of learning languages, there are very academic documents, very, very technical, very, in some cases, obtuse. Maybe that's not the right word, but a bit difficult to get your head around. And so as a teacher, it is my job to find the sweet spot of making these formal, academic, researched, backed up with evidence and support, to have that sense of like, okay, this has been researched. This is not made up. These are things we can trust, yet making them accessible for a general public who may not have those studies and may not have that literacy level or the critical thinking skills to kind of read a dense document, a technical document, a highly academic document, and extrapolate the general ideas, the main ideas, and find the practical application of those ideas. So this is my frustration in between kind of for like my own research to create and supplement lesson plans. It's to find this fine line between wanting to have kind of researched supporting documentation, bibliographies, and firsthand primary sources, interviews with people who know what they're talking about, what they've experienced, along with documentation from researchers who have seen patterns and seen things from many sources, data, but in times like these, turning these insights into practical action plans, because when we do listen, in some cases, not every academician or expert is also an expert communicator. So I have seen this firsthand with some teachers who were university professors who were brilliant in their areas of expertise, yet in terms of educating their students, there was a disconnect in terms of kind of the practical application, and they could be geniuses, they could be very experienced, and finding this way to effectively communicate, effectively kind of persuade students to see the importance of what they were learning, and kind of getting their mind around concepts. So I find it very important, very necessary right now to kind of make it as easy and accessible to understand these fundamental concepts that are going on behind the scenes, and make sure that as many people as possible can embrace, understand, embrace, and see the importance of what's going on. I've mentioned in these past few days of just this 8 years of organizing this challenge, and I try not to say it so overtly, but part of the starting of this challenge was this idea of like being the change that you wish to see in the world. And in terms of change, it's kind of standing up to discrimination, standing up to hate, standing up to divisive messages, and it goes against some very deep-seated values that I have about language learning as a tool for peace, a tool for embracing the diversity of mankind, humankind, and every email that I write, I'm wanting to find messages of affirmation, messages of peace, messages of hope, encouragement, that through language learning, we become very self-reflective. We examine our daily actions, our habits, our ideas, our beliefs in a healthy self-reflection, in introspection, challenging ourselves when we see a belief, an attitude that may not be just because a large part of society accepts it does not always mean that it is morally correct, or we might experience culture shock and enter into a thought process of judging another culture based on our own cultural norms. But sometimes another culture, another language, another community is a mirror that shows us a reflection of ourselves, our values, our beliefs, our behavior. And it's an opportunity to kind of like look at that and compare it, not necessarily good or bad or better or worse, but just to look at it, to be a little bit more objective. Because when we only function within a kind of monolingual society, a monolingual experience, we don't tend to question those things. We tend to obediently just follow the norms. And one reason I enjoy language learning is because it constantly encourages me to question what is acceptable, why. Why do we follow that? Why do we adopt that? Why do we hold on to certain traditions, certain customs, certain beliefs, yet we reject other ones? And why? Because there's some otherness element, or do we understand it, or does acknowledging it create cognitive bias where there's a disconnect, and we our sense of identity is threatened. Yet keeping an open mind, staying receptive to learning new information, realizing like, okay, what I believed before turned out to be kind of just not morally correct. Am I willing to do something different? Am I willing to question my beliefs? Am I willing to change? So I am forever grateful for having language learning, language teaching, traveling and living abroad and different places. I'm very grateful for those opportunities, and it is a privilege to have experienced those things, and they keep me forever humble. That I don't know all the answers, yet I constantly question myself and encourage others to question themselves. I don't think any one individual has all the answers, and I don't think that's the point. I think it's the questioning that if we are always curious, always questioning, always looking for reasons and understanding and finding respect for other cultures and other people, individuals, not stereotyping, not grouping and dividing, but finding the universal commonalities, the things that bind us together as humans, as beings that all having equal rights to this planet. Not one person, not one single person is better than another. I think fundamentally we are all equal, and until we all accept and embrace this idea that we are all equals, we all live on this planet. We all each have rights for food, water, resources, happiness, shelter, respect. We all are deserving of those things, and I will continue to teach and share these reflections as long as I can, because it's my life purpose to use language learning and language teaching for diplomacy, for personal growth, and for just be learning how to be a good human. That's my goal with language learning, just how to be a decent human, and how to encourage other people to see the benefit of how to be a decent person. Hola a todos. Ya llevo media hora hablando inglés, pero hay muchísimas cosas en que estoy reflexionando últimamente. Sobre todo hoy estoy viendo entrevistas y pláticas de periodistas, profesores, académicos y sobre temas de la vida actual, político en Estados Unidos y también en otros países, y a través de ciertas experiencias que he tenido como profesor, como inmigrante, y experiencias en Europa, experiencias en México y experiencias en Estados Unidos. Hay cosas que me preocupan y hay temas que quiero seguir estudiando porque veo que es sumamente importante saber informarme y poder transformar esas ideas para compartir los aprendizajes, porque a veces el contenido queda inaccesible o difícil de entender, y es importante en estos momentos de poder ayudar a difundir ideas básicas que se pueden implementar, y eso es principalmente lo que puede ser después de media hora en inglés, pero son cosas que me afectan y me preocupan, y creo que yo puedo ayudar y seguir fomentando diálogo a través del aprendizaje de los idiomas, y yo creo que es sumamente importante en ese momento fomentar esos enlaces y promover la paz a través del aprendizaje de los idiomas y el diálogo para comprender a los otros y mantener los canales de comunicación abiertos, porque es important. Bonjour tout le monde, aujourd'hui c'est le 30 mars et là je viens de parler pendant beaucoup de temps en anglais, mais pour dire que j'écoute beaucoup de entretiens avec des journalistes, des professionnels qui ont fait de la recherche dans certains thèmes qui sont dans l'actualité et qui sont préoccupantes, inquiétants aux États-Unis. Et au fait, il y a des choses que j'ai apprises quand j'habitais à Paris il y a 20 ans et que j'étais témoin à certains mouvements sociaux, et je voyais aussi dans les cours d'anglais que j'ai donnés qu'il y avait certaines idées et croyances qui confirmaient ce que je voyais dans la rue, et ce sont des choses qui sont au présent aux États-Unis, et ce sont des choses psychologiques que je constate, et que c'est pour ça que c'est inquiétant de voir où ça peut y aller, et quel rôle est-ce que je pourrais jouer pour aider à diffuser certaines idées et promouvoir la paix à travers les langues. Donc quand je dis que je veux écrire un livre, par exemple, ou petit à petit, je crois que ça devient de plus en plus important de faire ça, de publier ça. Et j'ai vu quelqu'un d'autre il y a 8 ans qui a juste dans une centaine de pages, juste écrire un minimum nécessaire avec des leçons de pourquoi il faut rester vigilant et réfléchir et le mettre les idées dans la pratique. Donc ça me motive aussi d'avoir un minimum nécessaire pour diffuser dans un premier temps un tome ou une œuvre, et voir comment ça peut aider. Donc ça me donne encore plus de nécessité d'avancer. Donc voilà. Hallo an alle, heute ist der 30. Tag in März, und heute sehe ich viele Videos für Sprechen darüber, was passiert in den Vereinigten Staaten, und Ich habe Angst, wirklich habe ich Angst und ich, ich habe gelesen, was diese Leute haben geschrieben und ich erinnere an einige Dinge, ähm, als war ich in Frankreich 20 Jahre, es gibt 20 Jahre und ich war Lehrer und ich habe mit vielen Studenten gesprochen und sie arbeiteten und sie haben gesagt viele Dinge, dass ich habe verstehen und auch habe ich viele Dinge im Straßen gesehen. Und jetzt habe ich Angst für was kann vielleicht passiert in den Vereinigten Staaten und ich denke, dass Lernen Fremdsprachen kann helfen. Es ist sehr hilfreich für Verstehen die Leute ähm, äh, und ich glaube, dass jetzt ist es sehr, sehr wichtig, was mache ich mit der Herausforderung und ich möchte mehr erklären, viele Dinge und ja, ich kann nicht so viel erklären auf Deutsch, aber ich habe viele Dinge auf Englisch gesagt. Ja, das ist alles für heute. Ciao a tutti, oggi è 30 in Marta e oggi ho passato molto tempo per vedere video se gente che ha parlato di cose che può succedere agli Stati Uniti e per questo ho paura e penso che posso fare io e mi ricordo cose che ho imparato in Francia come professore con inglese e studenti che non hanno voluto imparare in inglese perché in questo momento francese avevo stato molto importante e capire che quando gente hanno paura o non vogliono avere meno potere o controllo, c'è una sensazione di rechazo, reject, e avevo capito un po' questo della psicologia e oggi capisco cosa può passare negli Stati Uniti e per questo penso che imparare le lingue straniere è molto importante per capire, per avere domande di perché pensiamo di questa maniera e come possiamo intendere capire altre persone. E penso che con sfida voglio continuare perché è molto importante fare questo. E questo è tutto per oggi. Всем привет! Сегодня 30 марта, и сегодня я посмотрел много видео, и что случается в США, и я также помню, когда я был во Франции, и когда я был преподаватель в Париже, и я понял, потому что люди не хотели учиться английский язык, и сейчас я понимаю, потому что люди как сказать, не слушают люди, и как сказать, я не знаю, как сказать, объяснить на русском, но я думаю, что учиться иностранные языки помогает понимать людей, и поэтому я хочу продолжать делать челлендж и также объяснить по интернету. Так, это все на сегодня. Не знаю, если я смог говорить clearly на русском сейчас, но это много на английском и также на испанском, на французском, на немецком, на итальянском и на русском. Так, это все на сегодня. Большое спасибо, пока.